A good atmosphere, Villa Park.
They'll probably lay down and surrender for. Gerrard will lay down.
And we're live on the 20 in this lot of chat shit. Good evening, Rich.
Good evening. How is everyone?
Good evening. Everyone, I'm good.
How are you, Roberto?
Good evening. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Spurs are currently in a Force 10 gale around London at a snail's pace on their open-top bus tour. Woo!
We done the double over City. That's all they're celebrating. Trophy.
Well,
Anyway,
they've won the
this is not the
City
this is
Cup
not the
twice.
Manchester City moan show. This is the Premier League show, hence the title. Gentlemen, let's start on Saturday, shall we? West Ham United 1, Newcastle United 1.
Great result for Newcastle. Getting a point away in a very tough game. I think Newcastle keeping the run going, looking increasingly safe. And, I think West Ham, from what I saw in the highlights, looked the better team. But I think Newcastle are becoming a little bit more robust, especially at the back.
Totally agree. I think West Ham haven't been the same since the whole drama over Zuma, and I think it's affected them from top to bottom in terms of their performances, and they just seem to blow leads in terms of their games and don't seem to be clinical, unfortunately.
I disagree with that statement entirely. Sorry, Abdallah. West Ham United are the best team in the Premier League by a mile. They are overachieving. The game against Newcastle yesterday meant more for Newcastle than it did for West Ham United. Both teams were excellent. I watched the game in its entirety. West Ham are not collapsing. They're not. No. They last season they finished 6th. This season they'll probably finish 6th or 5th.
They still got the Europa League.
And there was a misquote as well yesterday, touted by the perennial waffle merchant, about David Moyes saying West Ham were tired. He was talking about that game specifically. And he was talking about that game specifically because Newcastle United were really at the races. Newcastle United don't want to be relegated. That was a game against the team. Basically, West Ham United are in their mid-season stride, and Newcastle United have got all this new verve and all this new momentum about them. That's all yesterday was. It was an excellent game of football to watch. Newcastle needed the win, probably, and West Ham, if they did want this top 4, this elusive top 4, then maybe they needed the win as well. But it was just a very, very good game of football between two teams. Yeah, could they be more clinical? Absolutely, Abdallah. Of course they could be more clinical, but it was just an excellent game of football for a 1-1 draw. Cal Blundell?
I agree with you, Rob. I think you need to remember West Ham have got a very small squad. It's not as good as and they haven't spent as much as the other teams around them. They're still in the top 6, doing a very good job. Yes, they're not winning a lot of games at the moment, but their squad's very small. They're tired. They're in every competition, bar the Carabao Cup. Cut them some slack. It's a 1-1 draw against the Newcastle team, who look revamped. They look back. They're playing some great football under Eddie Howe. It's a good result, in my opinion, for both teams. West Ham, they stayed in. Even when the game was, going to Newcastle at times, they stayed in and fought, and they dug out a 1-1 draw. And, at the end of the season, this could be a game that everyone looks back when the 1 point clear, sat 4th. We could all be sat here looking back, going, that was the game that got them 4th. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Rich?
Well, I don't think West Ham are a team that are going to collapse. For me, they've kind of strung together wins with draws and losses sprinkled through fairly evenly. So I don't think they're going to collapse. It's just whether they can pull together enough points to stay ahead of Arsenal, who would be my favourites for 4th at the moment, and then United are obviously playing all right, but Wolves as well. Wolves keep getting good results, so I think it's getting into a pretty exciting battle for 4th place. And you never know, Chelsea might decide they want to enter it as well.
I don't even know whether West Ham consider themselves to be in the top 4 race. I really don't. They know what their own ambition is, and I just think top four. If West Ham do get top four, and West Ham do recover, and West Ham do find the levels, then it will be as a result of overachieving. I don't think it's in their sights. I don't think David Moyes has even got it in their sights. But
I think
that's why, in a way, it becomes more of a free hit. Like for United, it's do or die to come fourth. I mean, the financially, etc., it's absolutely vital. Where probably for Wolves and West Ham, and maybe even Arsenal at the moment, it's a free hit where if they get there, it's a massive bonus. If they don't, they're not expecting it.
I disagree. In terms of Arsenal and Spurs, it's not a free hit. They need it. In terms of it will affect them financially and in terms of going into the transfer market and what players to attract in terms of performing for next season and progressing in the short to long term.
Yeah. Well, Chris Baker, the commentators loving Kurt Zouma boating a cat. Amazing. Jack Lee, we'll get on to Manchester City in a little bit and blah, blah, blah. I noticed that Youssef, honestly, Youssef, you are one of those pathetic little cretins that only turns up when you've done something good. I
just go watch
It's so strange. Honestly, Youssef, it's so strange, mate, that you've been silenced for 3 or 4 months. You see, the difference between people of class and people of quality, like Manchester City fans, is we're here regardless, win, lose or draw. Been there, done that. You have supported a team probably for about 3 or 4 years now. Because let's be honest, you've no idea where Liverpool is on a map. You've no idea where Stanley Park is on a map. You've never set foot in Anfield. You've only supported Liverpool for like 3 or 4 years because you're a little glory hunter. And your team has been absolutely mediocre for 30 odd years. So what can I say? What can we say, Youssef? You got a bunch of English teams banned from Europe in the 80s because you've got pathetic fans. You've done nothing throughout the 90s. You got bantered by another Manchester club for 2 decades. And now you're going to get bantered by another Manchester club for another 2 decades. You're nothing and you're nobody. And, and your support is about as genuine as your support. Fact.
And Rob, do you know what the funny thing is? I've seen Liverpool, some United fans hoping Liverpool win the league. Yeah, and apparently they're their biggest rivals.
Yeah, great, amazing. They're all plastics. Arsenal 2, Brentford 1.
I think times are getting really tough at Brentford now. I think if you look at that table and you now see the games in hand, Brentford are going to be dragged down to at best 17th in the next few weeks, possibly actually into the bottom 3. And they're really hitting bad form and really dropping at exactly the time that, Burnley and Norwich and even Watford, and of course Newcastle are starting to find form. So it is, and probably they're protecting Everton and Leeds from. They've also had a bit of a sticky, run. They're protecting them from dropping down because Brentford is that now 6 wins and a draw from the last 7 Premier League games. They were really looking good, and they're right in there now. I think Brentford. Possibly another defeat or 2, and they'll be one of the favourites to go down.
I am worried about Brentford. A couple of weeks ago, I said that they'd probably just about scrape it this season, but it is increasingly unlikely now. Cal, you've got a lot of nice positive things to say about Arsenal. Why don't you just reel off a few of them?
Well, I think not just discussing the Brentford result, because I think it's a great result. Brentford are a tough team. Yes, they're not. Yes, they probably will go down, and they have lost themselves. They know that momentum, but they are a tough team. You know yourselves. They played you twice and gave you probably a harder game than a lot of teams that have even beat you have gave you. The way they played you very full on. They defended well, and they were compact. But again, in Arsenal's performances over since January 2021, we have seen a progression in the way they're playing. The style's more into what Arteta wanted back. It's not fully to Pep style, but it's more of that. Attacking, on the front foot, nice passing, them little close passes, passing in triangles pretty much. And we're seeing that with Arsenal now. Look at yesterday, they had 24 shots. They won 2-1. And again, that's another brilliant result. I think personally, Rob, I don't know if you'll agree or not. I think they'll get top 4. And you know what, Rob, I know your opinion on Saka and Smith Rowe. Saka, for me, he's so talented. And I don't think there's a youngster in Premier League better than him. I think
the only thing, Cal, stopping Arsenal from getting top 4, I am completely with you. I think Emile Smith Rowe's fantastic. I think Saka's fantastic. And I think that Arsenal, I said this last night and I'll stand by it, Arsenal are 2 or 3 years and a couple of purchased players away from a title challenge. The only thing, though, that I will say that's going against Arsenal, and yes, I did say at the start of the season Arsenal are going to get relegated, just in case anyone wants to bring that up. But let's add the context as to why I said that. They played about 3 games and lost them all about 5-0. Yeah. So,
Rob, I think you're spot on. I think they're 2 players. Well, if you put a 27-year-old Fernandinho in that Arsenal team, and then you stuck a decent striker in there, I reckon they'd be a hell of a team. They just lack leadership.
Yeah,
and
that's the thing. Granit Xhaka,
bit of brains in big games.
Granit Xhaka's absolutely just
he's a liability.
He's not the lead. I mean, like Cal will say that Xhaka's a decent player. Yeah, he is when he plays, but then he just likes to get himself sent off. Yeah. So get rid of Granit Xhaka and get a potent attacker. But the only thing, so this season specifically, what's keeping Arsenal from getting top 4 this season, Cal? Manchester United exist, and do you remember about 8 or 9 years ago when Manchester United fans used to take the piss out of Arsenal because their literal ambition was get top 4?
Top 4, yeah.
And that Arsene Wenger survived on getting top 4 for 4 or 5 years, and the Arsenal fans, be careful of what you wish for, because that they wish to get rid of him, and then they suddenly just absolutely plummeted out of the top 4. So Manchester United exist, and they are well capable of the dark arts and the bullshit. So they United might get that 4th spot. The team that I would be considering that Arsenal might challenge for, they are 8 points behind them, and this is madness saying this, but Chelsea, they've got a chance of slipping out the top 4.
Question mark. What, Rob?
I don't think so.
We said this off the show, guys, didn't we? Chelsea, from August to October, were brilliant. They were beating almost everyone. I think the only team they lost to was City, and the only team that they drew to, I think, was Liverpool. So the top 2. But since November, they've struggled to win games. I think they've won. What's the stat, Rich? 4 in the last 12 or 4 in the last 13 or something like that.
I know at one point they were level with Norwich in terms of, in 2.5 months they'd won the same number of games as Norwich. But that was, about a month ago. So they're not great. I think they we were talking about this yesterday. I think, all of us, we were criticising City and to a degree Liverpool for not having a plan B. That the weakness of City and Liverpool is that they have plan A, and when it doesn't work, they don't have a plan B. Chelsea don't have a plan A, and that's their problem. I just watch them every game, and I just think, how are you trying to play? What are you trying to play? Have you got the right players? And, it can work in a one-off game. And they obviously showed in the Champions League by nullifying everything in at City. They won the game, and they won it without huge problems.
Yeah, well, we'll talk more about
they
Chelsea.
They don't have a plan A.
The one thing I will say about Chelsea is, in the summertime, anyone looking at that Chelsea squad identified that they needed one absolutely potent Premier League striker to be a complete squad, and they didn't buy a completely potent. They bought Lukaku instead, and it was a gamble, and it's not worked. Yeah. I don't think. Anyway, let's move on. Aston Villa 0, Watford 1. So Steven Gerrard, the greatest manager of all time, has it's been found out again.
Yeah.
Carpites are gobshites, Rob. Like I always have to tell you, mate. Carpites are indeed gobshites. But yeah, again, Rob, you know this when you watch Rangers a lot, don't you? A lot of Rangers' defeats under him, yes, they weren't many, was when teams would just go at him. For some reason, Gerrard's system, and certainly at Aston Villa, they lack something about them. It's that, Troy Deeney said about, funny enough, Arsenal, they lack cojones, and this Villa team do. When it goes against Villa, they don't drag it out. They panic, they don't know what to do. And look, yes, they had 20 shots, so you could say it was unfair, but they didn't convert them shots. They had 1 on target, and Watford have probably been the worst team in the Premier League on form, and they've gone away.
City had 20 shots yesterday, and we were awful. Yeah, but the thing about Aston Villa, 1, they're at home. 2, they signed Digne, They signed Coutinho, and they've just gone backwards a little bit, Aston Villa, in my opinion.
I think the Digne signing, for me, I watched him every week for almost 3 years. I know how good he is attacking. Going back, he is terrible. He's very bad going back. And in a system of just 4 defenders, if you have no cover from the centre mids, because let's be real, John McGinn and Jacob Ramsey are 2 very attacking midfielders, Rob. So when they're pushing up, Digne has no cover. He's pushing up with them. So there's no one covering his spot. So it leaves a massive gap. And this has been a lot of goals they're conceding recently. Yeah. But again, was Villa even the right move for Gerrard?
Because well, I will tell you one thing about Steven Gerrard. Last season in the SPL, Rangers had the best squad. The deepest squad, the best squad, the most experienced squad, and the hardest working squad. That's the only reason why we won the SPL last season. Nothing to do with Steven Gerrard. Just my opinion, though. Let's move on. Rich, Brighton and Hove Albion 0, Burnley 3. Burnley, Rich.
Well, this surprised me on both fronts, actually. One, because Brighton, looked more open and not as effective probably as any game I've seen them in this season. And Burnley, honestly, looked like they score 1 in 3. Might get 1 in 4. Suddenly scored 3 goals. So fantastic result for Burnley, and it could give them some momentum in what's getting it's a pretty exciting season down the bottom of the league at the moment from what it was all sewn up a few weeks ago. So cracking result, and they showed some fight, and Brighton, I don't know what was going on there, but for a team that's looked really solid and doesn't look like they're going to concede that easily, even playing against the top teams in the country, suddenly look quite vulnerable.
Yeah, well, this show, Rich, is called "Is the Title Race Back On?" ? But really, Abdallah, when we look at it, mate, Newcastle got a point away from home, Brentford lost away from home, Watford won away from home, Burnley won away from home, Norwich lost away from home, and Everton lost away from home. They're sort of like, that's 5 out of the bottom 6 teams there. 2 winners, 3 losers. What do you make of that, Abdallah?
I think the Weghorst signing has rejuvenated Burnley, in my opinion. I think he's better than Chris Wood. I think he is, maybe, and younger as well. I think it's rejuvenated them. He's a finisher, and I think it's boosted them. You know how it gives them, when you get a new manager, he gives you're in the honeymoon period. In terms of them signing Weghorst, I think they're in the honeymoon period in terms of that. Maybe it was a slow start. They got that draw against United, if I'm correct in saying. And yeah, I think it's pushed them on. And I wouldn't be surprised if they are safe from relegation or finish maybe 17th or 16th. I wouldn't be surprised. They would just switch up a gear. Maybe get a draw against a couple of the top 6.
Right. Do you want anything to say on Burnley? Dominic Calvert-Lewin?
You know what? For me, it's absolutely terrifying because I've said it to a lot of people. Burnley's season's a very weird one because they're not playing bad. Arguably, you could say they're probably playing the best they've played in a long time. However, they're just drawing games and they've struggled to put away the chances and they've struggled to get goals. But yesterday, they were very clinical. And that's the difference. That's what can keep you up. That's what can get you 3-4 extra points in this league, by being clinical. And they went against a very great Brighton team, in my opinion, who have been incredible this season. They went and didn't just take 3 points. They scored 3 goals, matched them going forward, and with a better team. So credit to Burnley. And hopefully they can prove a lot of doubters wrong, because a lot of people have said they were finished.
Well,
and when you look at it,
Cal, you've played 23 games. You've got 3 games on the people who have played the most amount of games, which is 26. You're currently in 16th on 22 points, joint with Newcastle on 22 points. You've got a game in hand over Newcastle, but you've got Watford that have got 2 games. They're on 18 points. Burnley are 4 games behind the pack on 17 points. Just started winning games. Norwich, it looks like they're completely just adrift, if I'm honest. They are on the same amount of points as Burnley, but they've played 25 games. So
yeah,
I think we can finally condemn Norwich. But Burnley, Watford, Newcastle, Everton, Cal, and then you've got Brentford that look like they want to get dragged down in there. Everton need to get some points soon, buddy boy.
Yeah, I agree, Rob. But can I tell you the difference between a lot of them other managers and players and Sean Dyche? Sean Dyche will not allow Burnley players to continue their horrible. Like, if they're playing bad, he will change it, and he's got he has something about him where it doesn't matter. We've all said this before in previous seasons where they're done, they're gonna go, and he's kept them up, and he hasn't just kept them up. They always end up finishing 15th, 14th when they were in the bottom three. That's what Burnley do, and you know what? I think Weghorst played very well yesterday, and he's played well since he signed there.
What was it?
And he just needed that
assist,
goal,
right, for Weghorst?
Yeah, and he got that goal and assist, and he got that goal. And if he can start firing, no doubt for me they're staying up. If he can score 6-7 extra goals this season, they're staying up for me.
Okay, well, let's talk about a team that's been overachieving of late. Crystal Palace. They lost 1-0 at home to Chelsea, Rich.
Yeah, the big stat that stuck out for this game. Again, I watched highlights, but it didn't look like there were that many. The big stat was that Romelu Lukaku, 100 million striker, player that some not that many City fans thought could come in, had 7 touches, and I think I read that was the worst number of touches by a Premier League player since 2002-2003 season. So there's quite big problems, I think, even though they won. I think there's problems at Chelsea. They're just no plan A, as we said a few minutes ago, but they scraped out the win. Palace, Palace, I think, you look at them and they're only 2 points ahead of Brentford, which, after what we've just said about Brentford, seems like a absolute disaster. But because they've got such a young team, and in some ways would have been one of the teams I thought were going to be right battling out for relegation at the start of the season. We probably think of them as doing a bit better than they have been, partly because they came to the Etihad and won fair and square.
Yeah.
But they're not getting many points. They are probably the top of the bottom.
Yeah, just about. I don't think they'll get dragged into the relegation race.
They're safe.
No.
They're safe.
Liverpool 3, Norwich 1. A team that I'm going full blown condemning Norwich. Didn't some waffle merchant say that Norwich were going to smash the way out of this relegation fight a couple of weeks ago? Dean Smith.
Well, they look like it. They
Liverpool
got
3,
up to
Norwich
like 17th, didn't they? And then they've just dropped straight back down when they've had a couple of hard games. And I think, I think they've probably had their golden, honeymoon period under Smith. Yes. And I think probably they're batting down the hatches to go down now. It's a bit scrappy. I mean, I watched a fair bit of this game, and, it wasn't a masterclass by Liverpool. I mean, there was some awful defending for a couple of the goals. Salah nearly tripped over his own feet, but did well. But he kicked the ball in at about 1 mile an hour. I mean, an OAP could have jogged back and cleared that off the line. But, they're grinding out the wins.
That's about desire. How many times Kyle Walker, John Stones making those, according to you, João Cancelo yesterday, making those goal line clearances, And if Norwich haven't even got the desire to put that in, then worries.
Yeah, and, in the end, it was a relatively comfortable win for Liverpool. It's opened up the title race, and I think Norwich now are really just thinking about the Championship next season. They just look like they'd given up a bit to me. They didn't have that much fight.
Gentlemen?
I think with Liverpool, look, it's hard for me to come at this because I'm always going to have a biased point of view because I absolutely despise Liverpool. So giving them credit, I think for all of us, giving them credit is hard. But I think it's one of them. I think they have.
Right, I'm sorry, Kel, stopping you right there. Sorry, mate. For all of us, giving them credit's hard. No, it's not. We do give them credit. The problem is, as somebody said in the chat before, Liverpool have quite literally got the best player in every position in world football.
Yeah, that's true.
Best keeper, best right back, best left back, best centre halves, best midfielders, best strikers, best bench, best tea lady, best accountants, best fans, best stands, best grass, best fucking car park, blah, blah, blah. So it's pointless in anyone saying anything. I'd like to point out that in the last 4 Premier Leagues, they've only won 1 out of the 4. So the refereeing decisions going against Liverpool must be horrendous. Either that, or it's just all a bunch of hype train waffle bullshit. You know what? If Liverpool do somehow win the Premier League this season, congratulations. Well done. Well done. Well done to you. Honestly, well done to you. Well fucking done. That if you do win the Premier League this season, that means you'll have won 2 titles in the last fucking 30 years. Which makes you worse than Manchester City.
Yeah.
Worse than everyone. The fans are horrible.
So there you go. So let's move on from Liverpool because they're fucking a bunch of candle lighting cunts and I can't be arsed about them.
Yeah, let's go.
Southampton 2, Everton 0.
Oh.
Rich, start us off.
I haven't seen much of this game, but what I will say is Southampton have impressed me over the last month. They are looking organised. They're looking solid. They're looking like, they're actually coming good in a way. I think about Brighton. They do look like they have a plan. They do look like they've got away from playing. I think the unfortunate thing for Southampton is that, and probably for Brighton as well, is that they're in real danger of losing the manager to another team when they get that form together. And ultimately, if Southampton ever have any good players, Liverpool always go and sign them because they're, an academy club for Liverpool. So, they probably will get taken down a peg or two after coming good. Everton, well, I'll let Cal talk to Everton. Everton are a team who whenever I watch them, I always think they're going to play better than they do. And they've just lost that. They were such a hard team to play for so long that most of us, when we see the Everton game coming up, still think we're going to get, kicked off the park. They're going to be organised. They're going to be really, really solid and aggressive in defence. And I think that's nostalgia probably to David Moyes and a few of the things afterwards. But,
and Joe Royle.
I keep thinking Everton are too good to go down, but they keep trying to prove me wrong.
There's no right. Okay, Rich. There are 2 nightmare scenarios which I'm going to ask Cal about in a second. Everton could beat City and hand the title momentum to Liverpool, and then lose at Anfield and give them the league, and get relegated in the same season.
Mm.
So what this means, Cal, is that you basically got to stop being shit.
That's like, it's literally like the weirdest scenario ever. It's like next Saturday could be the weirdest time for Everton fans because it's either we lose and we go into the bottom 3 or we win, and that means Liverpool get closer to City. So for Everton fans, it's a lose-lose situation for us, really. But I think just on yesterday's game, it's typical Everton. And I said this to you, Rob, and I said it to you, Rich. It's going to be one of those seasons now for the rest of the season. It's win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1. 1 step forward, 2 steps back, unfortunately, for us. And that's because of the season. Rafa Benitez, the most stupidest appointment in football history by most clubs. Why would you do that? We did it. It didn't go to plan. It failed miserably. And yesterday, more in the game, Rob and Rich, and Abdallah, we played terrible. We had 9 shots in 90 minutes. 0 was on target. 0, may I just add. The midfield was torn to pieces like they are every week. The defence is embarrassing. And if we even think about playing Manchester City with that back line, you'll score about 10 in the first half. And actually, let me scratch that. If you play bad, you'll score about 20 in the first half. Because we are going back with the worst team in the league.
No offence, mate. And I don't... I like Everton. And I like you. You're a good lad. But we need to absolutely destroy you at Goodison.
You probably will. You will.
I think when it comes to those games, Cal, you just got to. There's no real dilemma. Everton want to win the game. I remember when we were bottom of the league and Blackburn were battling United for the title, and we went to Ewood Park and won. And the truth is, once the game kicks off, you totally forget what it's going to do for your rivals. You only care about yourselves, and as it should be.
Rich, is like the way everyone talks about is like Abdallah. That was like the perfect example, really, for me. Is even 5, 6, 7 years ago, you would never have really said, "Oh, it's Everton." Everton. You just would have went, "Oh, we've got to play Everton." Oh, here we go.
I've never said that, Cal. I've never said that.
I know, but I think...
By the way, sorry to interject, Darren Ferguson has resigned as Peterborough manager. Just saying.
The pity.
I don't think...
Commentators will have now to talk about now, Rich.
I don't think
He's scared.
anyone's
I think
scared of
he's
us.
scared to play us.
Yeah, I don't think anybody, honestly, in my opinion, is scared to play Everton. I think we were a team you were scared to play. It didn't matter who you were, because we wouldn't park the bus, but you'd play us, would fight, would show passion, would show spirit, and it would be hard to break down, and would always, steal 1 or 2 good goals at the end. But we don't do that anymore. Look at this. The last 3-4 years, it's the same pattern. We go 1-0 down and it collapses, or a decision goes against us and we fall apart. And I'm sick of Everton fans yesterday saying, "Oh, the penalty didn't go in our favour." Yeah, but when that penalty doesn't go your way, that's when you go, "Oh, that penalty didn't go away. Let's get a goal." No, but we don't do that. We panic. We don't know how to defend. We don't know how to play. We can't pass a football, and I'm sick of it. If personally, I do think we'll go down, but it's one of them. If we go down, we just regroup, go again next year in the Championship, and try and rebuild the football club, because this football club is on its floor.
A lot of those players on big wages need to get booted if you do get relegated.
Maybe that's the best thing, Rob, because
we got relegated with 56.
Yeah.
I just want to tell you a bit of history for you. I think 1996-97 when we got relegated, the second time, we had 56 players on the books. 56.
Jesus, but again, let's be real, guys. We have players, and every time I speak to you guys, and I tell you some of the players we have on a lot of money, Iwobi, Gabam and Gomez, you all laugh, because look at them type of players. They're not even Championship, League One level. They're awful players, and we're paying them over 100 grand a week.
Was that the preparation all along, to sign a bunch of League One players for when you get there?
Wasn't Iwobi going to be much better than Sergio Aguero?
Maybe the plan. I
heard that from John Aldridge.
I don't know what the plan is at Everton, but all I can hope is that the players pull it out, Lampard gets into them, and then we go again, and we try and stay up this season. Because for me, Everton fans that said that, for me it's over. We've been, let's be real, we spent 600 million quid. And the last few seasons we've been having terrible starts, but always getting it back at the end. And eventually your luck's going to run out. That luck of staying up is going to run out, and that could very well happen this season, because we have to play the 5 of the top 6 in our next couple of games, and we're not going to get any points out of that, in my opinion.
Maybe you can get some points off Liverpool.
Well, that's what you need to do, yeah. You need to go to a Candle Field and beat them. Right, let's move on. Let's briefly sum up Manchester City 2, Tottenham 3. Go and watch our post-match with Martin. It's a very good video. It's got a lot of views, positively reviewed. Good. Someone accused me of being English in the comments, but we move. I'm Scottish, not fucking English. Tottenham are still, like I said before, are having an open bus parade. Well done, Tottenham. Briefly, gentlemen.
Can I go first?
Game. Yeah, briefly. Brevity, though. Brevity is the soul of wit. Go.
We were awful. We were just shambolic. Absolutely shambolic. Our defending was awful. Literally, the floodgates kept open from minute 1. Literally, we weren't on it. The players didn't want it. We couldn't finish our chances. All of a sudden, we were cross Chester, Manchester City FC. All of a sudden, we don't have a striker. I don't get what was the obsession of crossing the ball into the box. We literally
44 crosses from City. Apparently.
That's outrageous. That is outrageous. Literally, I don't get it. I don't know. I don't think the players wanted it from minute 1. Literally, Rodri turned into Plodri, into a bloody plunger. The defense, I don't know. Diaz was as much as fault as Cancelo, but Cancelo was awful. Literally, he cannot defend. He's great going forward, but he's awful at defending. He just cannot defend. And for me, Stones has to be back in the lineup as soon as possible. Our best partnership is Diaz and Stones. And let's be quite frank, and I think I speak for everyone. Correct me if I'm wrong. The only reason Laporte is playing, okay, he has had good performances, but games like Crystal Palace and this game as well, he's only playing so he can shut up and not throw his toys out of the pram and
he's throwing his toys out the pram. The toys are going out the pram anyway because Laporte's going to Barcelona in the summer. And the only reason tactically that he's playing is because he's a left-sided centre half. He's a great player. Laporte is great. Let's not dispute about that. But the thing is, he's just the third best. Stones and Diaz are better.
Sorry to interject, but we proved last season we don't need a left-sided centre back or that type of nonsense. Diaz and Stones worked well.
That's poor. I'm sorry, but that's Pep Guardiola. I'm sorry. You all tell me week in, week out about hey, all hail Pep, all hail Pep. Pep Guardiola is the greatest manager ever, but he thinks too fucking much.
He overthought
Sorry,
it.
that's
He
a
overthought
fact.
it.
Right, I just want to address one thing that Chris Baker said in the comments before you and Cal say whatever you want to say about City. But Chris Baker said about, where was it? Oh, Chris, where's the waffle gone? I swear you said something about how Harry Kane's the greatest player on the planet. This was the first ever game that Harry Kane's ever actually scored a goal in. This is a big game. Harry Kane scored goals in it.
He's awful majority of the season.
So anyway, that's all I've got to say about that. Rich and Cal, please sum up quickly, and then we'll move on to the Sunday
It was
game.
an awful defensive display, and I think, Stones has got to be in the team against Everton and probably Zinchenko too. I think they've both deserved it. Where I'm going to strongly agree with Chris Baker is this Laporte thing. I thought yesterday Laporte played far better than Diaz. I thought Diaz was the weak link at centre-back. I think Laporte and Stones have played 15 games together, conceded 1 goal and won 15. So, if we're going to make a change at centre-back against Everton, which I think we should, I'd actually be playing Stones and Laporte because they're the form partnership at the back for us. And I'd probably, unless we decide we're going to go Stones right back, because, Walker was a liability as well yesterday. But I think we need to shake up that defence a bit. Bernardo back into midfield, make the right calls, and I think we'll bounce back because it was a really awful day at the
Morris
office.
has to start.
I think that Kyle Walker's time in a Manchester City shirt might actually be up at the end of this season. He's just, I know that he's. We're not. This is not a fucking who we signing show. I know that Kyle Walker's had personal tragedies and all the rest of that sort of stuff. Possibly, I actually don't know, but I think this is his last season in the City shirt. And I think that there is a systemic problem in the Manchester City changing room at the minute. Everyone says that it's fine that he went out and watched the boxing match last night and got pissed. Fuck off. Get in fucking training. You were shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, I didn't actually slag fucking Laporte off. I said one of my favourite players, Diaz, was shite yesterday. Rodri was shite yesterday. But it's all to do with that midfield three. It has to be Gundogan, Bernardo, Rodri. You can't fucking put Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne in the midfield together. Yeah. You can't fucking do it. And Pep Guardiola, every single time, literally, I will get you the statistic for the next stream. Every single time Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne play together, we fucking lose. That's just, unless we're playing against some absolute FC dog shit. So anyway, moving on. Leeds United 2. I don't know why Leeds United are not fucking Super Leeds anymore. They lost at home to Manchester United 4-2, which really fucking pissed me off. Because, you know what? There shouldn't have been a single United fan who made it back on a train down to London after that game, because Leeds United should have just destroyed the fucking city of Leeds.
They
pissed me off. Absolute fucking bottle merchants. The white flags were out, and none of them had fucking white roses on. They were just white flags. Pissed me off.
They deserve to go down. 100%.
Richard?
Very weird.
Leeds. I keep making excuses for them from the injuries. They're still playing some good football and chances, but they're really lacking a bit of heart this year. I'm not sure whether it's missing, Cooper and Phillips and players like that who've missed quite a few games have given them a lack of leadership, but they're a bit like a B-Tech Arsenal, in that they, and by B-Tech I mean an Arsenal that's on the verge of relegation instead of the verge of the top four, because they just lack a bit of heart and a bit of leadership at the moment. And I don't know how they'll get that back, but they need to address it soon, because if Burnley and Watford and Newcastle keep getting results, then, Leeds and Everton are right in the mix, and they shouldn't be, not with the players they've got. Leeds have got a lot of very good players. They were a very decent side last year, and it, second season-itis, but they need to pull their finger out pretty quick.
Big time. Cal?
I agree with Rich, I think Leeds are just, they're such a tough one, because this is the perfect example of, you can play lovely football, but at the end of the day, what would you rather have? Play very boring defensive football and be 8th, or 9th, or play Leeds' football and be fighting for your lives. So that's what they are. Essentially, if we win our games in hand, I don't think we will, but if we do, Leeds are right down there in serious trouble. And Leeds, yes, they've got a lot of injuries, and you've got to feel sorry for them because they've lost their spine. They've lost their spine of that team.
Absolutely.
Calvin Phillips, Bamford. They're 2 players. If you take 2 players of their quality out of any team in the league, bar the top 4, they would struggle. And you could even argue teams in the top 4 would struggle because Leeds rely on those 2 players so much. But let's be real. I don't know if you've watched the game. United dominated the first half, but then the second half, Leeds were all over them for the first 15, 20 minutes. And if Dan James had the football and brain, Leeds would have got a few goals because he wastes so many chances with poor crossing and poor shooting. But yeah, Rob and Rich, I'm worried for Leeds. I don't want them to go down, but I can't see them staying up with the way they're playing and consistently leaking goals at the back. So yeah, United won, but I wasn't that impressed with United's performance. Their individual quality got them through and Leeds' errors, but unlucky for Leeds, man.
United have not impressed football-wise. They've had some good results, but football-wise, they haven't impressed in a single game for me this season.
Other than Leeds, the very first game of the season when Pogba got 4 assists or 5 assists, the very first day of the season when they beat Leeds, funny enough, I think it was 6-2 or 6-1, and United battered them. They looked good that day, and that's where everyone went on this crazy thing of them winning the league, but for me, they're just the fourth, but I think they're miles away from Arsenal. They don't play the same football as Arsenal. They don't dominate. They don't even.
Manchester United have the fucking power of the dark arts.
That's true.
They will always remain the biggest club in world football, Callum.
Yeah, that's true.
They've got
They've
got even more rapid. Actually, Manchester United fans are a higher class citizen than the Liverpool fans. There's no dispute about that. But the club's too big to fail. Just honestly, I know that people say whatever. I know we've had conversations about all this sort of stuff, but they will keep throwing billions and billions at it until they get the right combination. It will happen.
How long's Bielsa got left, guys? Though, is Bielsa's time running out there? Because if
that's the other thing, Leeds United.
Bielsa's more likely to walk himself. I think. If he thinks he can't change it, he'll go. He'll pick up his carrier bag and he'll leave.
I think Bielsa will have an amicable retirement or something. Leeds fans love him. He's got them back to what they call the promised land. All the rest of it. There is very little animosity against Bielsa himself. I think the fans would rather say the club's not backing him properly, or it's not working quite as well, or whatever. But I do think that they'll get a new manager. I think Bielsa will walk. They'll get a new manager and probably get relegated again, unfortunately. Right, last game of the weekend: Wolves 2, Leicester 1. Oh dear! It looks like Leicester City are still shit.
Yeah. Wolves, fair play to Wolves. I thought with the change of manager, they've lost some good players over the last couple of years. I thought they were a team that might struggle this year. And pound for pound, I reckon that Wolves are doing as well for what they have and how people thought they'd go as any team in that league. I think, a couple of months ago, I would have said Brighton, but now I think Wolves impressed me. They now have the joint best defensive record in the Premier League. I think, Connor Cody and their keeper, is it Sarr?
Jose Sarr.
Yeah, Joe. They have impressed me all season, and they just keep Wolves. They're never going to score 7, but they're never going to concede. Barely ever concede 2. They are a solid team. They are organised. They've got some good players, and fair play to them. They impress me every time. They are so organised, so organised as a club, and they have such a way of playing. And it's a lesson to everyone, and it should be a lesson to Chelsea and some of the others. But Southampton, Brighton, this is probably true of Leeds, and they're probably the exception. Wolves, they are organised. They have a system. They play the same way. They buy players for the system, and they do well. And that should be what every club tries to emulate.
Wolves have done wonderful, and I know we all talk about David Moyes, we all talk about a lot of top managers at the top of the Premier League at the moment: Antonio Conte, Pep, Jurgen Klopp.
The only sentence that David Moyes belongs in the top managers is David Moyes is not a top manager, Cal. He is a world-class manager.
Yeah, definitely. But I think Bruno Lage in the Premier League deserves to be spoken upon as well. He's been absolutely incredible. They lost Nuno. Yes, it was a bad last season, but Nuno was wonderful for them. He took them to Europa League, you know what I mean? But Bruno Lage, I think, is going to do that again. He's got Raul Jimenez firing again. Ruben Neves is back to his best. They're so put together well, and that was the
Carl,
perfect way. Yes.
the big problem is, mate, that Wolves are going to get raided again.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
That's another
They've
problem if
got
that
there's
happens.
two
If-
huge
if-
games for Wolves in the next 2 weeks. They're going away to Arsenal and West Ham.
Yeah.
If they get good results in those
I think they
games,
might.
or if
I
they can
think they
get a
might.
couple of draws, they've then got actually Palace, Watford, and Leeds at home in March. So if they can get 2 or 4 points in those two games away, which are a bit tough, they then go into this. They then go. In fact, one of them an FA Cup game, or they're both Premier League games. They then will be in a really good shape to go through March with good results and actually put themselves. They could be on the verge of the top of their Champions League place at the end of March if they can have a good last couple of games in Feb.
Problem with Wolves isn't during the season; it's when the transfer window's open.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
you look at Southampton a couple of years ago. Southampton literally had a Premier League winning team that was raided by Liverpool and everyone else, and Wolves seem to sort of be the same for that as well. If I was Manchester City or if I was Liverpool or Aston or United, I'd be looking at whoever makes the player signings from their club and try and recruit them. If I'm honest,
Well,
I know that's bad because it'd destroy
isn't it
Wolves,
Mendes? Don't they have
I don't know.
some deal with Mendes, and he's just bringing through Portuguese talent?
Yeah, they have
through
the Wolves guy that they just signed loads of Portuguese players. But guys, we need to all like I said last time I was on Rob that I thought Leicester were going to get dragged into a fight to stay up, and you all agreed with me, and some people laughed at me. I don't think I don't think you can argue that anymore. Leicester are in a horrific position, and I think that candle for Brendan Rodgers is fully burnt out.
Well,
the
the
players,
thing that's saving Leicester, Carl, is the fact that Villa, Palace, and Brentford are just below them, and Aston Villa, Crystal Palace, and Brentford are worse than them. So that's the only thing that I do think they're shit, and I think Brendan Rodgers is shit. Absolutely. Kelechi Iheanacho, though, I love him. I wish he was playing for a good team. It's almost as if he was at a good team and we sold him pointlessly. But anyway, top of the league is Manchester City. Bottom of the league is Norwich. What will that be like next week, gentlemen?
The exact same, I think. To be honest, I think you have probably the easiest fixture in the league at the moment to go to at Everton. So I think that's for us, in my opinion. And I don't want to sound like because to be honest, I'm not even giving credit to City on that. We are terrible, and any team will beat us. And I think the way you play, you will batter us. And the way Lampard sets up an attack and the attacking way he sets up is made for Pep, because that's how Leeds set up. And look how Leeds played against City. It would be a perfect example. Open the floodgates. City are going to, we're like a wounded animal. City are going to take advantage. And Norwich are crap, so yeah.
You say City are a wounded animal, but all of our players...
No, Everton. Everton are wounded animals.
City are a wounded animal as well, and all our players are out on the pitch. Rich, have your final thoughts, mate?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, Rob, this isn't about the Premier League, but I just want to say, as a City fan, I've got a bit of a soft spot for Oxford United as another team. I left Manchester in my teens and lived for some time in Oxford and used to go to the Manor with my mates who are Oxford fans. And there was a young lad, incredibly, exciting player in the early 90s, Joey Beauchamp, who used to play down there. It was probably the Phil Foden of Oxford United, possibly their greatest ever player. He played 400 games. He was an incredibly exciting two-footed left winger who I think had the footballing talent to get into the England team and get to the top. But he had mental health problems. He signed for West Ham. He couldn't handle being away from home, being away from Oxford. Lovely lad. I knew him. I used to work in a betting shop, and he used to come in every day after training. And sadly, he passed away with mental health issues at 50 years old. Over the weekend, and he really was that magic player to Oxford. He really was special, and it's just sad. You see it in football too often. The the pressures of the game and the pressures after football about what you do with life. And I'd just like to say, R.I.P. Joey, you were a magician and you were a gentleman. And and thanks for giving me the chance to say that.
Very well said, Richard. Very well said. Yeah, it's always awful and terrible when we lose. I mean, listen. No matter what the size of the club, we as fans do idolise these people. Sure, we give them stick. Sure, we take the piss out of them, whatever. But we idolise them. We want to be them. And when you've got a lad like that, and I was aware of this guy a long time ago as well, but Rich has just really cemented the idea I had of him, which was that he was a bit of a talent. And when we were growing up, you know what mental health was when we were growing up? Mental health was just ignored. Fact.
Yeah.
And this guy obviously never seemed to reach the heights of what he could have been, but he still had an honest career. He still had a relatively good career. And like Richard said, Oxford United, he'd be fondly remembered and loved. So
yeah,
there you go.
I mean, he was, at 400 games, arguably their greatest ever player, and he was exciting. And when you beat the old manor ground and he was in form, he actually, he made the place magic. And he for Oxford fans, he was a hero, even if he never really, made it at the level he could have done.
Exactly. Right. Thank you, everybody. Callum, Richard, and everyone watching at home. Thank you very much for joining us on the 20. We'll see where we go from here, because we don't know. Weird that, isn't it? Liverpool champions 2022? Question mark.
Oh.
Yeah, whatever. Bye, everyone.
Bye.